If you are an avid player of Pathfinder and you want to try to convince somebody who maybe plays D&D or some other tabletop system to move over to Pathfinder, how would you try to convince them? What would you say? What would you tell them? What would you compare? Think about your opening pitch to one of these players right now and keep that opening pitch in your mind. Got it? Good. We'll come back to that later. If you're active within the TTRPG community, you will no doubt know that there's a lot of stuff happening with D&D and Wizards of the Coast right now. There was the massive dumpster fire related to the OGL, there's a lot of watering down happening with one D&D, now just called Revised 5th, and all of this seeming to stem immediately after the interview where it was said that D&D is highly undermonetized. All of these things happening right now within D&D have really made Pathfinder players go crazy, because a lot of Pathfinder players are now seeing justification in playing Pathfinder over D&D for more than just the game itself. A lot of Pathfinder players are talking about how the stewards of the game are way better than the stewards of D&D, how there's way more customization and way more options in Pathfinder than there is in D&D. And now, of course, with the leaked rules that are going to be happening in the 2024 Player's Handbook, tons of Pathfinder players, and even Pathfinder itself, talking about on Twitter how you can always play half races in D&D, including half elf and half orc. And all of this has given rise to Pathfinder players now going into Reddit, into Twitter, and into YouTube and talking to content creators and regular people saying, hey, stop playing Dungeons & Dragons, come play Pathfinder. And I personally have no problem with Pathfinder. I like a lot of things about Pathfinder, even though I've never played it myself. But I also like a lot of things about Call of Cthulhu. I like a lot of things about the Cyberpunk game that I've never played either. But I don't play Call of Cthulhu, nor do I play the Cyberpunk game. Or do I play Pathfinder? I only play Dungeons & Dragons. And if you're a Pathfinder player, you're probably wondering, why are you still playing Dungeons & Dragons? Pathfinder is such a better game, and they have way better stewards running the game. I like D&D. I've played D&D for over 6, almost 7 years now. I have a ton of both official and non-official books from third parties about D&D and the game system. And I have no reason to switch from Dungeons & Dragons because I love the game Dungeons and Dragons. And so do my players, because they wouldn't keep playing otherwise. And on top of the fact that I've played it for so long, I've been a DM for all of those years as well. So I'm very, very well versed in the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I'm not perfect, and nobody gets everything perfect every time they play Dungeons and Dragons. I mistake a lot of rules, and I will overrule a lot of the official rules for the sake of whatever I want it to be, because I am the Dungeon Master and I'm allowed to do that. But you have to know the rules in order to break them. And I'm very comfortable with the rules of D&D that I can break them and I can alter them however I wish and still keep the fun in the game. But I've only gotten to this point by playing D&D for so long. And you could argue that I could redo all of that with Pathfinder as well. I could learn the rules extensively in Pathfinder, I could change over, and it might not be that drastic of a change since Pathfinder is in itself used to be a version of D&D that has since morphed into its own creation. But I don't want to. I have no desire to change everything I have over to a brand new system and relearn a whole brand new system, even if it is familiar to what I already play. I have no desire to do that. And neither do my players. I have no interest in taking my group of players, sometimes 4, sometimes 6, sometimes more than that, and teaching them all a brand new system because I don't like the stewards of the current game. Why do I not want to do that? Because I don't care about the stewards. I don't need Wizards of the Coast to enjoy D&D, and neither do any of you. I have said this over and over and over again. Wizards does not dictate the rules and how you play Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, they make the official books. Yes, they make the official campaigns. Yes, they are the official stewards of the game. But none of that matters when you sit down at your table. Otherwise, homebrew would never be allowed. Making third-party campaigns would never be allowed. None of this would be okay. Once you buy the book, whatever book it is yours. It does not get changed. The server does not suddenly go down. You can play it forever. Wizards could lose and fall out of existence today, and I would still have all my books to play with forever and ever, because it is not a video game. It is not an online server. It is creation from your mind that is helped and aided by books and sometimes online resources, but you don't need any of that to play D&D. And you don't need any of that to play Pathfinder either. You don't need any of that to play most tabletop role-playing games. You need it initially to learn how to play. But once you're comfortable with how to play the game, you can keep going with whatever direction you want. And as angry as I and many of you are at Wizards of the Coast, We don't need them to play this game. I don't need them, you don't need them, we just need the initial rules, and even from that point you can change the rules however you want. Whatever's fun for you and your table, do it that way, it doesn't matter. I like the 5e system. I'm very comfortable with the 5e system, so I'm going to continue to use the 5e system. I have no desire to switch from it. And I have even less desire to switch from it when somebody who actively plays Pathfinder tries to get me to switch by going at it in this way. So understand, when you come into my comment section, or you reply to any of my tweets, or you go into a Reddit thread, and you try to tell me or anybody else to switch from Dungeons & Dragons to Pathfinder, maybe try and understand that we don't have a problem with Dungeons & Dragons. We have a problem with Wizards of the Coast, but we don't need them to play Dungeons & Dragons. I don't like Wizards of the Coast. I really don't like them as a company. I think there's a lot of problems with them, and they're continuing to make problems for everybody as a whole. But this does not alter my enjoyment of the game Dungeons & Dragons, because the game can still be played without the company. Even if the company tries to change certain things about the game, you don't have to take those changes into consideration if you don't like them. I have the original Curse of Strahd book. I love the original Curse of Strahd book. I think it's a fantastic campaign, and I'm really excited to play it again. But even though they made erratas to that campaign, and even revamped it and made a new version of it with these changes, I don't need to buy it. I don't need to play it. I have the original book, so I'm going to keep playing the original book. D&D is not an online game. It's not an online server. It's not something that you need to constantly update or you can't play it at all. Once you have the physical copies in your hands, they remain unchanged and unaltered for as long as you want them to be. And if you do want to change something, or if you see a change that Wizards makes and you want to take it, then you are all the more allowed to do so. But you also don't have to. So no, I'm not switching from Dungeons & Dragons. I'm going to keep playing the game because I love the game, and I'm very well versed into it, and I'm very comfortable making the changes that I want to make for the sake of my table. Have fun with Pathfinder. Have fun with Call of Cthulhu. Have fun with whatever game system you want to have, but do not try to switch me over to your game system by putting my system down and elevating yours in a higher pedestal. That doesn't make me want to change. If your way of trying to get me to go to Pathfinder is by saying Dungeons & Dragons doesn't have enough feats, Dungeons & Dragons spells are limited, the classes are awful, the races don't really work, and you have all these other options that are way better than Dungeons & Dragons on Pathfinder, look at this, that doesn't make me want to play Pathfinder. So if your opening pitch from earlier was talking about how bad D&D is compared to Pathfinder, that doesn't make me feel bad about playing D&D and want to switch to Pathfinder. That makes me think that you're an asshole for putting the game system that I love down. You are saying that my version of fun is not good, that my version of enjoyment is no good compared to your version of enjoyment. That doesn't make me want to switch. Have fun with your game system, and let me and everybody else have fun with ours. I would love to sit down and play Pathfinder sometime in the future. I have no problem giving another system a try, but I have no desire to force myself to switch, and by extension, all my other players to switch to a new system, because the company at large is bad. The company doesn't dictate how I play my game.